Well, this is a new single by our dear friend Ziggy Marley called I Am a Human, which has been released to the world for free. Check it out online and share it around. Brother Ziggy will be returning to 21st Century Radio in 2 weeks. Yes, he'll be joining us, and there's a lot of wonderful things we need to touch on with him. He has a book on cooking, a cookbook. He's one of the great cooks. This is amazing. It's wonderful. Welcome back to 21st Century Radio with our guest, Tricia McCannon. Jesus, the explosive story of the 30 lost years. Haven't you wondered about what happened during those 30 years? It always puzzled me. I had to know sooner or later, and I'm glad I found someone who can confirm what many people have suggested, but have never been able to confirm to my expectations, because I'm a Virgo, and that's a problem. It really is, because you want to get things right the first time, and when you make mistakes, I don't like myself when I do that. But anyway, we're back with our guest Tricia McCannon, and I want to point out one more important thing here. I'm holding up this book to the microphone. Those of you who've been listening to us for almost 30 years, some of you have been able to train yourself to read something over a microphone. That's correct. So I'm holding up page 3 of this extraordinary work, and it deals with the wisdom orders and the mystery schools. And there are 12 of them. And this is exciting to me because I knew many of them, but she's added on things here that were missing from my analysis, mainly because I had 1,400 other things to do at the time. So I certainly want to thank you for this wonder. Who did the drawing here of the heart of Christ?
Are you talking to me, Bob?
Yep. Who did this drawing of the heart of Christ?
Are you? Well, I'm not sure what page or
I'm sorry.
It is. I'm so sorry.
That's page 3 of chapter 1 of the Wisdom Orders, in which you go list and.
I did that.
That's extraordinary.
I did that. It was.
This is a great teaching tool right here.
Yes, thank you. There's a wheel of. I have one of the outer orders and the inner orders,
That's
and
right.
I think the inner orders didn't make it into the book. Although there's obviously of these quote outer orders, there are obviously deep and profound, beautiful teachings from all over the world. They have an inner aspect, but there's sort of there was a wheel that I teach in my mystery school. As you may or may not know, I've been teaching the great spiritual mysteries for many years, and I've had a mystery school called the Phoenix Fire Lodge, the Order of the Eagle and the Dove, for 12 years. And for many years, I just taught here in Atlanta in person. In fact, I had people coming from all over the Southeast and even people flying in from San Francisco and Santa Fe. But, the classes, there were 12 classes, and they'd be about every 5 weeks. So as you can imagine, that's a little pricey for some people to fly in all the time. So for years, I had people asking me, do you have, an online class? And I had to say, no, sorry, I don't. And so finally, about 3 years ago, I got the first 12 discourses up online, so people anywhere. And I now have students in, Belgium and Germany and Canada, across the U.S., even in Dubai, I'm not kidding. And you can order them, and they're $99 a piece, which is really reasonable. Or you can actually order like the first 3 for, $225, so it saves you $75. And they're each, probably the shortest one's 100 pages. Most of them are 130, 150, even 180 pages. And they're, of course, all sorts of gorgeous, beautiful drawings, processes, knowledge, information on everything from the mystery schools to hermetics to the 14 different kinds of dreams, to soul travel, astral travel, the tree of life, the path of the return, Native American twisted heritage teachings about the mineral and the crystal kingdoms and the plant kingdoms and the animal kingdoms and shamanism and psychic self-protection. And So it's always best to start at the beginning. I've had people, ask me if they can jump around. Certainly each one stands alone, but it's much wiser. Just start at the beginning. It doesn't take that long. And what happens is, you can order them online at my website. Go to the part that says Mysteries at the top, and then there are all these drop-downs. So for the online classes, each class has its own page with an excerpt and a table of contents. You can really get a feel for each one of the discourses. And then at the bottom of the page, you can either order it separately or you can order it as part of a set of 3. And then I get the order in, and I send them individually as a separate email, and they're a PDF. So you just click on it, it opens up just like a book. It's really just like a book. And I always tell people, just print it off, put it in a 3-ring notebook. That way you can write in it, you can take notes, you can highlight the things that you want to, and study it. Take it to lunch with you. And, I let couples, if you're living under the same roof, they can study a discourse together for no extra money. That's fine. Whether you're married or married in your heart, it's fine. And so the first 12 are up. And the second level of the mysteries really is all Egyptian, although there's Egyptian that's woven all through the first level, along with Christian and Celtic and Native American and many sources, Buddhist. Really, the higher you go in consciousness, the more you see that it's a universal conversation. The masters aren't arguing with one another. It's just when we're down here stuck in dogma or kind of a smaller, more limited view that's more territorial or fear-based. And, of course, that's what we're raised in. So there are many good people who have good hearts. They truly love God, and they are seeking, the divine. But they've been conditioned to believe it had to be accessed through only one religion. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, as I said, there's the exoteric path and the esoteric. And the exoteric is full of rules and regulations and dogma and guilt and blame and shame, not just in Christianity, but in many religions. And then the esoteric is where you're really able to make that connection with the divine, and you begin to realize that masters are teachers. They're people like us that are further on the path. Even divinities. Divinities are beings that are even further on the path than the masters. They're holding a larger piece, if you will, of God consciousness. Any true divinities, they're not really interested in being worshipped, or they're interested in helping us. They're interested in helping us awaken to our own connection with the divine. Mm-hmm. So we can realize that, the divine is in everything, in everyone. It's in, the squirrel that's running up the tree, and it's in the tree. It's in, humans. It's in animals. It's in plants. I sometimes think of ourselves as like fish swimming around in water going, I don't see any evidence of any water. Do you see any evidence? Nah, I haven't seen water. I hear there's something called water. We're so much in the body of God, we don't even realize that we are the fish in the big goldfish pond, which is the universe, and that the entire universe is made of God stuff. And, there are different beings that have called it different things. The adamantine particles of love is one of my favorites, that everything is vibrating in love. So the more we can vibrate in that love, the more the universe responds to us, the more we attract that to ourselves. So when, Jesus tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves and that love is the key, what he's really talking about, he's giving us the fundamental vibrational frequency of the universal mind. And it's through aligning with the universal heart and spirit and vibration and mind that we're able to begin to manifest our reality. We're able to begin to attract to us things that are in line with our divine purpose, our divine plan, which is part of what my next book begins to talk about, the nature of the soul and the journey we all take and what we're doing down here, what the course curriculum is. And I really wish that when we came out of our mom's womb, there was a little handbook that said, you are here. Okay.
Yes, I agree.
This is your past soul history, okay?
Yeah.
And you chose to come into this life for this reason. But, most of us are born with amnesia. or if
Yeah.
we don't have it when we're, a lot of people don't have it when they're 6, but by the time they get to be 7 or 8 and, the cognitive mind kicks in and the parents are doing the best they can to help the soul to assimilate, learn your ABCs, go to school, obey the rules, after a while, all that deeper spiritual connection that we come in with many times just kind of gets left in the dust.
It sure
That's not
does.
good.
Yeah, sure. I hesitate to move in another direction here because all I've been thinking about is the joy it's going to, not all, but the joy it's going to be for me to hand Ziggy Marley this book on Jesus.
Oh
Because,
my gosh, I loved his song. It sounded really cool.
yeah, well, he's very cool, right? And he's, it's really, we have a relationship that goes back to about 30 years. But, he has great thirst for knowledge, great thirst for love and acting in love and that aspect of it. And I have enormous respect for him. And so we're looking forward to, in a couple of weeks, to be able to say, as usual, when we say goodbye to him, we read all the stuff that, give him the stuff that he shares with his family, and not just his physical family, but and all the musicians in his group. We give out libraries of books to many, to the Hendricks families and other families, because they don't know where to look to find a lot of this information. So you made it a lot easier for us, especially in trying to explain all the mystery schools, because people that get involved in, well, all these mystery, are they fighting with each other or something? I mean, they act as if other people that dislike this material, to say that, that all of them are wrong. And yet they all seem to work together on a much higher level. And that's one of the great values of just this one page. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I better stop. I'm stopping. So I better.
No, really. I mean, just a little bit I heard of that song is totally magical and wonderful. And, of course, Bob Marley was wonderful. I imagine this is his son, right?
Yes, this is his son.
Well, they brought so much light and love to the world. And, I hope his music continues to just expand and his success to get greater and greater, because we need all the joy and love and light and optimism that we can possibly get, especially in the political climate that we seem to be waking up to every morning.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll tell you what. In regards to this, I don't want to forget this. I hope you don't mind my putting in your little package of thank yous a guitar pick from his dad.
No.
Yes.
No, that's like too precious.
No. This was made by his family, but he didn't play with it. You're right. I could buy a house with.
Oh my gosh! Well, what a profound honor. I might have to start playing the guitar.
Yes, you're going to have to play the guitar. We'll get you together with Ziggy, because I think he would just love learning this material. It's really important for people that like to stay ahead of things, and he does. He's a great leader. We got time out here on the playing field with Tricia McCannon, and we'll get back to some other important questions I need to ask. And this is what you can bone up on during this time. Who is the thrice greatest Hermes? We'll be right back with Tricia McCannon. Jesus, the explosive story of the 30 lost years, and the ancient mystery religions. Hampton Roads Publishing. Visit Tricia's website for more info on her books and readings and talks.
Hi, this is Dr. Jean Shinoda Boland. I am a Jungian analyst, an author, and an advocate for a United Nations NGO World Conference on Women, and the author of Goddesses in Every Woman and Like a Tree. And I've just been interviewed on 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronymus, and we have covered the waterfront from contemporary to archetypal to activism to all kinds of things. I think you will enjoy the program. I can be found at www.jeanboland.com.
Welcome back to 21st Century Radio with our guest Tricia McCannon. Jesus, the explosive story of the 30 lost years and the ancient mystery religions. Hampton Roads Publishing. Yeah, again, you can visit Tricia's website for more information on her books and readings and talks at TriciaMcCannon.com. Wow, boy. Okay. Pretty exciting stuff as far as I'm concerned. Who is the thrice great Hermes?
Wow, what a great question, Bob. Actually, Thoth is one of my favorite beings. He was known as the god of wisdom in ancient Egypt, and then, of course, the Greeks began to call him Hermes, or Hermes Trismegistus, or thrice great Hermes. He was also known as Mercury, the messenger of the god, the scribe of the gods. And it was said that he wrote over 42, well, it said actually that he wrote over 365 books, but that there were 42 we know of in the Library of Alexandria in northern Egypt at the time of Jesus and past that time, because we know this from the early Christian father Clement of Alexandria, who talks about the 42 books that were written by Thoth in the library, and they were on healing, law, architecture, mathematics, sacred geometry, herbs, astronomy, astrology, magic, theurgy. And theurgy is different from theology. Theology is kind of what they teach you when you go to seminary, and that's talking about God. Theurgy is making a direct connection with God or with the divine. So one's more of a mental exercise, and the other is more of a heart-based spirit encounter, let us say. And so those books were said to contain all the wisdom of the world, and as we know, the early Christians burned them, and then later when they were, a lot of them were replaced or recopied, or they had copies. The Muslims came in and burned them in the 600s. And so, to my knowledge, we don't have those 700,000 scrolls and books that were so very, very important in terms of really recording a far more ancient history of the world than most of us think about or even know about.
Yeah.
I think this was in large part by the Christian and the Muslim church to try to rewrite history. And it, from my point of view, it was like giving us a historical lobotomy, in truth, because that there was probably information on Lemuria and Atlantis, on these earlier ages of human civilizations, on the great spiritual masters, probably the Anunnaki gods that visited the planet. I mean, so much information that we are only now just beginning to piece together in some kind of a real timeline through the discoveries of some of the things I was talking about earlier. Right now I'm putting together these amazing new presentations on the scientific evidence for earlier advanced civilizations, because we've found so much of it, like screws in 300-million-year-old rock and a three-pronged plug. I'm not kidding, in a 400-million-year-old rock that geologists have said the rock grew around the plug. Yeah. So, I mean, either ETs were visiting and threw the garbage out the window, and 4 million years ago, or else, there's something else going on with our history that we have no real sense of. And we know anthropology kind of pushes Homo sapiens back 200 to 300,000 years ago. In fact, they've now found, like you remember with Lucy, the female from South Africa, where they have traced the X chromosome of all living people to Lucy, who was like I think she was Australopithecus, about 3.3 million years ago or something. But now they have a Y chromosome that they've managed to trace to men that they date back to about 270,000 years ago, saying that basically, Homo sapiens, as we know of them, and later Homo sapiens sapiens came around, we believe, currently in anthropological circles. That came up about 40,000 years ago. So, I know this is kind of not the direction we wanted to go on Easter, but we could have a big conversation about this because this is one of the many fields of interest that I have where I'm really trying to look at the big picture. And how I have come to see how this fits together is that basically we are immortal souls. We have the spark of the divine within us. Some of us are more aware of it. Some of us are less aware of it. Some of us have clouded that spark of light and love and beauty through, terrible conditioning or trauma, or not believing in ourselves or loving ourselves, not realizing we're connected to the whole and acting in selfish, a destructive manner. But ultimately, all of us are on a big journey, and that journey is we descend into the lower worlds of time and space. We are playing. We're kind of, every lifetime is a series of tests. Every single day, we have a choice of being angry or being kind. We have a choice of being impatient or being understanding. We have a choice of being destructive or being constructive. And so every day, every single day, we get a new opportunity, and we make slow but steady progress, hopefully, so that at the end of every lifetime, we've learned something about love and kindness and unity and the divine within ourselves and within others. And we come a little closer, lifetime after lifetime, step by step, to this divine wisdom that Jesus embodied so profoundly. And that the whole thing about Easter is that, in the mystery schools, they understood that the soul is immortal. But because we have amnesia and the curtain is mostly closed for people, they actually deliberately induced out-of-body, near-death experiences. And just as people die now and then they come back from the dead and they report going to the other side and seeing these vast cities of light and these angels and these beautiful beings, they deliberately set up these deep initiation processes, aside from all the teaching and all the other things they did to prepare the student. Ultimately, it was this theurgy experience where the person, through out-of-body, soul travel, near death, they literally had an experience themselves where they went to the other side. They saw what it was like. They didn't have to take somebody's word for it. They could realize that they were immortal and that what we do in every lifetime matters. It matters in not only in terms of who we affect in the third dimension, but it matters in terms of the consciousness we achieve so that when we die, we go to these various levels based on our consciousness, and also it affects the next lifetime when we come back because, we can't suddenly go from being an asshole, forgive the French, on radio to being, a master in one lifetime. It's a journey of spiritual unfoldment and evolution that takes time. And so they understood this, the masters did, and this is what the great mystery schools were set up for. And Hermes actually began all of these mystery schools because even though he was one of the Anunnaki gods who, lived for 400,000 years or 500,000 or, that 1 year on their planet was 3,600 of our years. So if they lived 100 of their years, that's 360,000 of our years, which is mind-blowing to us. It's hard for us to even conceive of that. And then they took, the soma or the nectar from the tree of life, which doubled their lifespan. So on their planet, they lived about 750,000 years. That's 750,000 years. So, of course, they would appear through time. We were living, at one point, like Methuselah and Noah and Enoch. Those guys had very long lifespans, but, even 1,000 years is a drop in the bucket next to when you're talking about, 750,000 years. So the gods would appear from age to age, and they'd appear completely unchanged. So, this is just because they were, the gods with a little g, doesn't mean they were completely enlightened. Mm-hmm. There were some that were just as secular and, worldly based as any human, and there are others that were spiritually much more evolved, and they had, tried to really embody this Christ consciousness. And certainly Thoth was one of them, and Isis, who was his daughter, was one, and Horus, who was her son, and Thoth's grandson, was one. Osiris was Isis's husband. He was one of those Christed beings. And as I talk about in the Jesus book, in my opinion, that was the same soul that incarnated as Jesus. And there's a lot of reasons that I say that. The MO is the same, a being who comes to earth, who loves humanity, who travels and heals and teaches, who brings light and joy to others, and who is taken out by the dark forces, and then through the power of love, Isis, is resurrected. And of course, what Jesus portrayed in the crucifixion and in the being coming, rising from the dead, was the immortal nature of the soul. The fact that he played out this great mystery drama that had been played in secret within the mystery schools, that you could die and come back and be reborn. He played it out on the world stage in Jerusalem before some very dark forces. I mean, those Jewish patriarchs that wanted him taken out, the Roman patriarchs that wanted him taken out. And so this was an incredible thing he did. And I have no doubt that he could have chosen not to do it. He could have not only chosen not to do it by staying in, Persia and India and the Buddhist communities and the Druids and all these places, the Egyptian community where he was for 7 years, all these places that knew him and saw him and loved him. But even in Jerusalem, he was psychically, spiritually aware enough that he could have simply avoided being caught or teleported himself or called in a bunch of angels to have moved him out of the harm's way. But he deliberately chose that crucifixion in order to have that mystery drama play out. And as he says over and over again, let those who have the ears to hear, hear, and let those that have the eyes to see, see. And this, whenever he says that, it is he's speaking to the initiates. He's speaking to people who can pull back the veil of the mundane world, the exoteric, and see the deeper meaning about what it is, that mystery drama of the crucifixion and the resurrection that we celebrate now 2,000 years later on Easter Day, what it really represented and how very important it was.
Whoa, boy, that was... You really unloaded there, dear.
Well, I mean, it is Easter. It happens once a year. And as you know, this was the ancient celebration of the goddess of fertility, Ostara. Ostara, that's why we have the Easter bunny and the Easter eggs, which doesn't make sense from the Christian perspective of, died on the cross. But it was the goddess of the cosmic egg, the goddess of spring, the one who birthed the new world, the new life, all the little baby animals and all the new plants. And, she doesn't really have a shape other than maybe like an egg, but it's the divine mother aspect that oversees the birth of the universe. And that's what Ostara was. And that's where we get estrus today, and,
Easter.
Ovaries and all those words derive from Ostara. And that's where we get Easter today. Yeah. So, that's the female aspect of the mother that births the world. Jesus is the other aspect of the one who is immortal, who dies for his love of humanity and for his willingness to undergo pain in the mortal world in order to make a point. And the point he was making was that we are all immortal and that our souls live on and that the spirit is greater than the flesh.
Yep. That
spirit trumps matter. So that's kind of a big point, don't you think?
Yes, obviously. And, one of the things I want to return to, because you brought up the divine feminine a couple of times, when we come back, we're going to take not our final break, but our bottom break here. You note that we have largely lost the ability to achieve this integration and balance because our culture denigrates the divine feminine, and I'd like you to go into explaining that for us. It's important. We'll be back with our guest, Tricia McCannon, Jesus, the Explosive Story of the 30 Lost Years, and Ancient Mystery Religions, Hampton Roads Publishing. And you can visit her website at triciamccannon.com.
Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. Karen Tate. I'm the author of Goddess Calling, Inspirational Messages and Meditations of Sacred Feminine Liberation Theology, and the radio show host of Voices of the Sacred Feminine Radio on Blog Talk. My website is www.karentate.com. And you've been listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronymus. I hope you'll read my books and discover why the spirituality of the sacred feminine is today's new liberation theology, setting us free from the domination and exploitation of patriarchy, and how that patriarchy has kept women and men from achieving their fullest potential.
Boy, she must have been reading my mind. We're in our last segment, and I'm sorry for that because I've got about 40 more questions. However, I'm going to try to concentrate on 3 more questions. And that is, Tricia, they are going to be, that's interesting that we had this particular question here. Oops. You note that we have largely lost the ability to achieve this integration and balance because our culture denigrates the divine feminine. And I want you to explain that. And then I'd love to try to get to who are the sons of God. Friends, there's so much in this information. I mean, a book that you really need to get your hands on. And we might have time for one. We didn't even get to there are 4 canonical Gospels, but there were many other Gospels. We'll never get to touch on them, but this book does, such as the Gospels of Thomas, Philip, Barnabas, Peter, Mary, and the book on Clement. I mean, this is just filled with information. We covered a bit of it, but you can only do so much in a limited 2 hours with all these commercials. So can we start with the divine feminine? And because our culture denigrates the divine feminine, you note that we have largely lost the ability to achieve integration and balance. What can we do about this, and can you explain it?
Well, first, I'd like to give a little historical context for this. This wasn't always so, and in fact, one of the things I discovered in the research of my book is we have discovered through archaeology and anthropology that basically for a lot of the first 200,000 years that Homo sapiens were down here on Earth, that everyone observed that who gave birth was the feminine of every species, and so who would have birthed the universe? Well, logically, naturally, it would be the Divine Mother. That makes sense because, you can see that's what nature tells us. So God was considered the Divine Mother, and she was the force that birthed everything, sustained life for everyone, and recycled everything once we die. It was the Trinity, the Divine Trinity, and life had, the maiden mother crone, or the youth, the man, the sage. Everyone had this natural cycle, and death was part of it because they understood that we were immortal. And we see this even in the burial graves of prehistoric man, where they put people into the earth in a womb-like position, with possessions preparing for the afterlife. So then what happened is, it became the Divine Mother and Father. Well, that makes sense, too, because, of course, we have a beautiful male aspect in the world and a beautiful female, and it's the joining of the two that creates life. And then it became the Divine Father, Mother, Daughter, and Son. In other words, there's an aspect of the Mother and Father, or God, the one, that it splits itself into two as the force of love and power, or love and wisdom, and that part remains in heaven. But then there are aspects of these divine feminine and masculine forces that come to earth, the sons and daughters of God. And they come down as fully enlightened beings who come to try to raise the consciousness of humanity. And I talk about them in my book about Jesus, and again, the other book, The Return of the Divine Sophia, which is the second book kind of in this series, where we're really discussing the discovery of this archaeology and anthropology and this bigger picture that's supported by history that most people don't know a lot about because, as you said, the patriarchy has suppressed it. So we went on pretty well during that period where it was the Divine Father, Mother, Daughter, and Son. And in fact, we did not have war for thousands of years, thousands of peaceful civilizations that didn't have to have war. Well, then the patriarchy decided they wanted the power, and everybody else had to bow to them. So they set out to get rid of the Mother, the Daughter, and the Son. And they basically did about, the better part about 3,000 years ago. And we had war, and more war starting from, actually probably about 4,000 years ago. From about the beginning of the Age of Aries, it became very conflictual, lots of wars all over, Assyria, Babylon, the Hebrews, Egypt, Persia. Everyone was fighting for 2,000 years. And then we got the Son back with Christianity 2,000 years ago, but we never really got the Mother and the Daughter back. I mean, yes, we know about Mary, the Mother, but the Catholic Church makes a very important point of saying, well, she wasn't really divine. She just lent her womb for the Son of God to be born. So don't anybody think she was special, despite the fact that Mary has appeared in over 250 apparitions of Mary that people have seen, miracles, statues crying. I mean, amazing things with Mary, okay? Yeah. Because, of course, she sees the suffering of the world. And so she was our aspect of the divine feminine that was left to us, but then the Catholic Church kind of made her into the obedient virgin. No, she was never allowed to have sex after Jesus. No, she couldn't have any brothers and sisters, even though we learn in the Bible that he does have brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And so, and we find this in some of the other texts, too. He had quite a few brothers and sisters, although he was the oldest. And then we wind up losing the daughter altogether. She's shoved under the rug, and no one even thinks to ask that there is a daughter. So, of course, poor little Mary Magdalene, the daughter, Sophia, got turned into a prostitute. And if she wasn't, the reason we think that is because in, I think it was 591 A.D., Pope Gregory, in his 33 homily, said something like, basically, where did she get that expensive ointment that she used to anoint our Lord? Clearly, she must have gotten it by perfuming her body with forbidden acts of the flesh. So that is like complete conjure that he made that up.
He made it up.
I mean, purely made it up. And then the patriarchy took it and just kind of ran with it because it suited their agenda. And, of course, there are people who have done other levels of research where they kind of showed literally that Mary and Jesus, it looks like, had one child and could have had two or even three, that there was a lineage of Merovingian kings that was throughout France. Most of them were very peaceful, high-consciousness beings who would have, let us say, a war counselor, although they themselves weren't warriors. But some of them did become strong as warriors. They united a lot of France and Spain and that area, and this was extremely threatening to the Catholic Church. So the work from the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail that I think came out in the 70s, 1975, I believe, by 3 authors, that book really takes a serious look at what that Merovingian lineage was, that the Catholic Church basically went up and made a deal with them saying, look, there were 23 sects of Christianity at that point. If you will support our version of Christianity, we will support the lineage of Jesus in perpetuity forever and ever. And, of course, they lied because they just wanted to get the power. And so the Merovingians said, okay. And so, a couple of hundred years later, they had a full-scale massacre of all the men, forced the women to marry into the usurper line, and that's kind of who then began to take power in Europe because the Catholic Church was all behind that. And all this has been heavily covered up. And, of course, it was political, it was monetary, it was social, it was control. And, you really have to dig to find this stuff, but you can find it. And it's good that it's coming out because there was just a whole twisting of the of the real teachings of Jesus. Like, for example, St. Augustine. Oh, my goodness, what a piece of work he was.
Oh.
I mean, he taught that we are damned from the time we're born
Yes.
because our parents had sex.
Yes.
So we're damned, and the only cure is Christianity. And, of course, that was really because he himself had a very rambunctious sexual libido, ran around and partied and had sex with lots of people, and his mother was Christian and made him feel so guilty that when he converted after having an affair with somebody for 13 years, he got engaged to a 12-year-old. Oh, yeah, that's really mature. You know, in order to assuage his conscience, a virgin, 12, okay? I mean, what a piece of work.
Yeah.
And after that, 2 popes ratified it. So, you know, the conversation about the great mysteries and the great sons of God and who they were and what they really taught is such a big conversation that I had to kind of put it in 2 books. Mm-hmm. So the one on Jesus, you know, you can just look up Tricia McCannon Jesus, and of course you can get it from my website or Amazon. And then and then the Sophia book is a whole other piece to that, where we are looking at how the divine feminine, I mean, the women used to be able to own property. If their husbands died, they could keep the house. Well, this became, you know, untenable to the Catholic Church. They wound up deciding, you know, here they'd send the boys off in battle, kill the sons, kill the husbands through war and battles, religious battles, and then the wife would be turned out. And this is where the whole story of the witches or the crones gathering twigs in the forest to survive, they felt so guilty because basically the church wanted the property. And that's the same thing, too, with the ministers. In the beginning, all the ministers, they could get married, no problem. But then guess what? They left their homes to their children and their wife when they died. The church wanted that property, so they changed the rules. And so, you know, it's gotten out of balance, and it's very sad because even somebody who is a priest or a minister has the right to have the closeness and warmth and love and intimacy of a wife or a husband and a family, and to try to impose something other than that creates this sort of twist in the field that we've seen where these Catholic priests have been accused of pedophilia and things like that. Because, you know, their options for getting some kind of sexual contact were cut off from adults. So, you know, they picked children, which was even more horrible. So, you know, they need to recorrect that so that, you know, both men and women who all have, you know, soul has no gender. We've all been men and women. Both can serve in spiritual capacities. And we can come more into balance. And men and women both should be allowed to love God, serve the divine, but also have a full life that remains in balance. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, because that's why we have the imbalance and why these crazy things happen.
Right.
Is that men can't control themselves, so therefore they have to punish the woman because, of course, it's all her fault. I have heard that a billion times, and it's truly amazing. And they're you know, even especially everyone knows about Fox Network. If you haven't read the New York Times and what is going on over on the Fox Network, it's just amazing. Zoe and I worked for the Fox at one time. We quit when we found out what was going on. All the hidden sides of it, which is now out in the open, and the the demands for sexual experience with those who are talking on having their own shows. This has just been happening again for the 4th or 5th time. And
I think this all came out when I was in New York City, and so I'm a little bit behind with it. But if I remember, there's a very popular host that there are all these, like, dozens and dozens of women that have come forward and said he sexually accosted them. And you know what? All they're interested in is the ratings. So
right.
It's like they're not even, here's supposedly a Christian-run station that's not even going to, like, you know, give him a slap on the hand or fire him, even though he's obviously, you know, run by his lowest chakras and not with the women's permission. I mean, he's, you know, there are people who are rapists, and they should go to jail. and they certainly shouldn't be having, high-rating talk shows where they're spewing their particular level of venom into the world.
Absolutely.
It's just it's not good. I can't remember what's the name of the guy.
Oh, right now, was it the guy Bill O'Reilly or was it?
Bill O'Reilly. Yeah, the
but
O'Reilly.
before him it was Aiken, Ailes. Ailes, and before that there was someone else, and they hid all of this information for all this time, and most of the people that just listen to Fox never get the whole story. They never do, because it's not given. And that is very unfortunate. Well, we're almost out of time here. What would you like to leave with our listeners at this time? We've got about 10 minutes, 10 seconds. Is that right?
Well, first off, thank you for having me on, and we have to do it again, Bob. And for those that are interested in learning more about the mystery schools or the lost years of Jesus or his teachings or the divine feminine, I would definitely say go to my website, TriciaMcCannonSpeaks.com or TriciaMcCannon.com. You'll find the books there, and you can order them from me along with a bunch of DVDs. You can look at the Mystery School. There's a lot of cool stuff on that site.
Oh, thank you. But we're looking forward to reading your book on angels and what that means in the future. Thank you for joining us, Tricia McCannon.